and you're just neighbors next door. But think of it this way. It's an even bigger thing when we're in Texas or California talking about it. And I have friends of mine whose chefs are in Dallas, and they do the same thing, but they're at home and they're cooking pancakes and waffles for their kids at home. And then they go out, and then their son or daughter will see a bottle of WhistlePig on a back bar at a bar or restaurant and be like, "Look, mommy, daddy, syrup." And it's like, no, oh no, that's the whiskey. And I'm like, yes. Like they're able to, at 6 years old, recognize the bottle shape already. So we're making little bit, piglets or mini WhistlePiggers as they come up, and the syrup is obviously a fun catalyst for that.
Awesome. For those of you just joining us on Facebook Live, you just got a little bit of a preview of what's to come from Doug at WhistlePig. So thank you everybody for joining us. For those of you just joining on Facebook, so welcome to our event tonight with WhistlePig. We are so excited to have our second event of our 90 Days Around the World promotion. Last night, we took you to California, and tonight we're a little bit closer to home over in Vermont with some WhistlePig Rye. We're so excited to have Doug and Ashley from WhistlePig on the line. We have our spirits marketing specialist, Mark Roy, here, and Shannon and myself are here to moderate any comments or questions that you have for the team. So you know what, Doug, I'm just going to let you take it away. Let's talk about WhistlePig. What's going on?
Let's talk about WhistlePig. Well, thank you, Carol Ann. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Shannon and Ashley, for helping set all of this up. More importantly, I know we all should be drinking tonight, right? No matter what happens and anything in the world. So if you do have a dram in front of you, I say cheers to you and thanks for joining. We're going to talk a little bit through some of the FarmStock release, and we're going to answer plenty of questions and talk as much about WhistlePig and give you guys as much insight as possible this evening. So I'm excited to be here. As you may have heard, I don't know when we went live on Facebook, it's very, very near and dear to my heart to be talking to people in New Hampshire, as my wife is from Portsmouth, born and raised. I've got a lot of family probably watching. Hi, Barfield clan. But at the end of the day, what we're here to talk about tonight is WhistlePig. And in the big picture of things, we started in 2007 by buying a defunct dairy farm in rural Vermont that was 500 acres. One thing leads to another, and we launched in 2010 is when we shipped our first bottles. But really what got us to where we are today is steeped in innovation. It all started with our master distiller traveling the world after leaving Maker's Mark after 14 years. He brought them from 75,000 cases to 1.4 million. He had helped build that brand. He had seen what the American whiskey was really doing, and he believed that rye was going to be the next big thing that was really, really going to explode and hit. He brought up rye whiskey in a board meeting in the late 90s and kind of got laughed out of the room. Now, I'm sure no one's laughing anymore, because at the end of the day, he had a brilliant mind and had the foresight to see what we all see on the retail shelves in New Hampshire and back bars across America right now, which is that whiskey's on fire. Rye whiskey is really the driving force behind it. And of course, craft is really, really the integral part that makes this fun and unique to talk about. So when he traveled the world and went to all these different places, he had never made rye whiskey before. Well, he stumbled upon some things in Alberta, Canada, that were actually flavoring whiskeys that would have maybe possibly been turned into, a Crown Royal or a Canadian Club or something that would have been a, 10% or less additive to kind of give that spice and that character and that jump. And that's really how we started. It was steeped in innovation that we were taking flavoring whiskey and bringing it to Vermont and finishing it and bottling it at a age statement and a high proof that had never been seen and done before. But really what the dream always was, and the most exciting thing about what we are at WhistlePig, is the fact that we are a 500-acre farm in Vermont that grows our own rye. We have our own stills, and we're using Vermont oak from the area and diluting the whiskeys with our water from our farm as well. So that's really what we're here to talk about. We're going to bounce around and maybe hit on a couple of the different other whiskeys in our portfolio. But 10 years what started the whole thing, right? And it's bottled at 100 proof, as Carol Ann and Mark can attest. They've bought more barrels than really anybody else in any of the neighboring states. and it's one of the best selections of WhistlePig products you could find in the nation. It's one of my favorite things to do, is to land and drive through New Hampshire and be like, we should stop off and you should take a look. And if you want to buy something, this is where to buy it, because it's not only one of the best selections, but it's also one of the cheaper because of the sales tax. That helps a lot, especially when you're climbing the ladder and going for some of the other higher end SKUs in our lineup. But 10 years what brought us here, 10 years what most people recognize. But at the end of the day, the big thing that we always wanted to be, and what we're here to talk about today, is a grain to bottle distillery. So as most of you know, we do rye whiskey. I always talk about us being a elevated taco truck. We really do one thing and do it well. Well, we're going to be expanding on that moving forward. We're going to be doing some other fun things. But FarmStock was always steeped in innovation to bring rye that was grown on our farm, distilled on property, aged in Vermont oak, and then obviously, like I said before, diluted with water from our farm. So we call it our triple tour. If you're familiar with the brand and the lineup of FarmStock, this is our third edition, FarmStock Rye Crop 003. Our fourth is Homestock, which I have a bottle and we can talk about a little bit later as well. But this all started with FarmStock Rye Crop 001. And it was 1 year rye from our farm, right? Distilled on property, once again, aged in oak from our area. And it was only at 20%. It was 1 year at 20%. Last year, we launched pardon me, 2 years ago, we launched FarmStock Rye Crop 002. And it was a 2 year age. It was 32%. And it was, once again, elevating and bringing more of our rye into the picture. It was the first ever that was a blend of straight rye, okay? And then what we're here to talk about tonight, which is really exciting, is a rye whiskey that is actually 52% our rye grown on our farm, distilled on property, right? The great thing about rye is that it only grows in certain areas. It's a winter grass. And luckily, as we all know, it gets really cold. If you live in New Hampshire, you understand. In Vermont, so it grows well. And the other great thing about rye is that it's GMO free and it does not spoil. So for years upon years, while we were rebuilding this beautiful building behind me, that was actually the barn at the dairy farm, we were cultivating the rye. We were doing crop after crop, and we were storing it properly. As long as you store it properly, it'll never spoil. So we had a plethora of rye to start going off of when we did get our distillery up and running finally in 2016. And it was really exciting to finally start seeing some things run off the still. We've since replaced it and have two stills now running. So we have Mortimer and Mauve. They were our pets. They were also iconicized on our Boss Hog 2, which was the Spirit of Mortimer with the flying pig pewter top, made by Danforth Pewter, also in Vermont, and our Spirit of Mauve, which was Boss Hog 5, and it was finished in Calvados barrels. So that is a French apple brandy, and it is actually because, well, let's be real, Mauve just loved apples. So we wanted to do something not only to have a tribute whiskey for her, but we wanted to make sure it really hit on all cylinders when it came to making sure that it was very Mauve-esque. If you ever have a chance to go to the farm and see anything, you'll notice that on the top of one of our hills in the rye field, there's actually what we call our mausoleum, and it's where their ashes are actually in. And also there's a bottle of Boss Hog 2 and a bottle of Boss Hog 5 down there, so you can cheers to our pets and the people that were our icons as we started our brand. So with regards to FarmStock,
there's a question in the chat, and I think it's a really good one to talk about. It's can you please explain the term farm rye?
Farm rye?
Sure, that we grow our own rye.
Oh yeah. So being that we are in a 500-acre farm, we continue to plant rye. We continue to cultivate the rye. It is literally rye grain grown on our farm that we've cultivated and then distilled. So it is a serious estate grain to bottle portion of this blend. And as this continues to move forward, we will continue to elevate the percentages and most likely the ages of the different ryes that go into the blend that is FarmStock. And if you ever look on the back of the label, oh, and my virtual background is working. How perfect is that? You'll see every FarmStock has all the transparency that you would ever want to know and learn about our product. So it has 52% rye grown on our farm from Vermont. It is 31% Canadian that has 6-year juice, and then the rest is 17% that is also Canadian at 10 years. So every year the blends change, and every year the age of our whiskey has increased. I can't speak to say exactly what next year will bring or what will happen as we move forward, but just know that this is our innovation SKU, that we're always going to be trying to do our best to hammer home the rye grown on our farm, distilled on our property, aged in oak once again from our farm, and the triple terroir and the innovation piece there. Were there any other questions regarding the rye that we can?
So we've had a few comments from people about the products from WhistlePig that they love the most. So I'm wondering, Mark, would you mind just sharing which WhistlePig products are available at our stores? I know Ashley mentioned earlier that we have the best selection in the whole country. So I know it might take you a little while to go through the list, but I think our viewers might like to know.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to. We have their 10-year rye. We have the 12-year. We have the 15-year. We do have some select 18-year out there that we recently put out in the stores. We do have a few bottles left out there, the crop number 1 that Doug spoke about earlier. We still have some of the crop number 2 out there. And obviously the crop number 3 just recently hit. So we have that whole lineup out there at this time that you can get your hands on. And then we've done, and Ashley may be able to correct me if I'm wrong, I think we've done 5 or 6 years worth of single barrel buys. We started out with some 10-year, then we did 10-year cask strength out there. Last time, yep, and there's one of the first bottles we did, Doug was holding up there. And last year, when we were up on the farm doing a selection, we were with Peter, sitting down with Peter doing the selection, and we actually did a 12-year blended bespoke barrel. And Peter was telling us about a new process that they were starting about bringing in barrels to do special finishes with. And they had a Chardonnay from California barrel coming in that they were going to age a 12-year-old in. And I said to Peter on the spot, I said, New Hampshire needs that. New Hampshire wants that. So we have the 12-year Chardonnay bespoke finish barrel as well. And that, I'll be honest with you, that is probably one of my most favorite barrels out of all the ones that we've done to date. And there's still some of that product floating around out there too. So if you love WhistlePig as much as we hope you do, we've got a great selection in New Hampshire. And like Ashley said, we have one of the best in the country, if not the biggest selection. So.
No, you do. You have the biggest selection. Yeah, absolutely. And I would like to say that you also have the Black Prince. So Boss Hog Black Prince. There's a couple bottles of those floating around. And what's so just unprecedented that you still have them is that specific Boss Hog won Best in Show at the San Francisco Spirit Competition, which is an incredible accomplishment. But even bigger accomplishment because it's the first ever American whiskey to win Best in Show at the San Francisco Spirit Competition. If you want to find it in store anywhere, you won't, except for in New Hampshire.
How lucky are we, everyone?
Yeah, I'm at a loss for words just to know that you can find so many of these past releases all in one place is an incredible thing. I've been obviously talking about FarmStock for years and years, and to know that you could potentially go in and like purchase a vertical of them is nowhere to be found. I can guarantee you that's nowhere to be found. So it was very, very, very good to know also that there's a little bit of Black Prince out there, because as most places do, you will find the numbers on the front or in the middle continue to rise as previous things sit on a shelf, but I don't feel like that's something that's going on in New Hampshire. So there's probably a really, really great opportunity if you're a collector or you are interested in finding something that is, 3 years removed, because at the end of the day, those are normally the things that are kind of finding their way into other markets and other people's hands, and collectors are swapping back and forth. But yeah, the 10 years for everybody that is not aware, basically when Carol Ann and Mark and people go out to the farm to select their 10-year barrel, they get set up with a bunch of different samples to taste through, and they get different proofs and different ages and so on and so forth. And then once that barrel is selected, we take that barrel and we bottle it, and we bottle 132 bottles, and then the rest of it gets dumped into our 50 barrel blend and then proof down to 100 for our 10-year. So literally when you buy a single barrel of 10-year, you are literally getting one of the 132 bottles from that barrel that's a time capsule on Earth, and the rest of it gets put into our 10-year and blended and proofed down. So it's really cool, very unique. I actually had my father-in-law, hi Dan, go to the liquor store in Portsmouth at the Circle and pick out a couple of single barrels for me after our conversation last week about this call tonight. So I'm still, trying to get as many of the New Hampshire selections as possible and building my personal collection as well. If he doesn't drink them all, and if he does, then we'll figure something else out. But Caroline said she had one that she absolutely loved, and when I hear those words and people get so excited about something that they selected themselves, I want to have a bottle for my own collection. So really cool and fun and unique. And the 12-year mark, I'll attest. That's a Spanish. Of course, it's not going to work.
There it is.
Spanish vermouth cask that I'm imbibing this evening. So those single finish 12 years and the bespoke blends are so cool, fun, and different. And to compare them also next to our regular 12-year at 30% Sauterne, 63 Madeira, and 7% port with what you have, whether it's single finish or your own bespoke blend, is a really fun game to play. And it's a really interesting, to see the differences. Even taking 1% from one finish to another completely changes the perspective of that whiskey.
Cool. So Doug, I do have a couple of questions for you, but before I go into them, I do want to just share a little anecdote of my own before we get into the questions. So Mark and Doug were talking a little bit about our single barrel program. So I had the pleasure of going with Mark up to WhistlePig last year when he selected some of those products. So that bottle that Doug mentioned was one that I actually got to taste along with Mark and the WhistlePig team. And I don't even know how to describe it. I'm going to say it's my favorite product ever because it's here in the state that I live in, because I was with Mark when he picked it, and it just feels so special. And it's really good. So,
well, and,
okay.
and I do have to say, Caroline, I only got one bottle of it in Portsmouth, and I know that there was 9 last week, and I think we bought the last one of your barrel, but I'm sure there's more in other
My
stores.
barrel. All right, now on to everybody else's questions. Let's see. David would like to know what the growing season is for rye.
So it's a winter grass. So actually what ends up happening is it gets cultivated at the end of the summer. So right now, as we head into winter, is when you'll see everything starting to get planted and everything start to kind of work its way. But it gets cut in, late August and September sometimes, right? It just really depends on the season. But it's a winter grass. I live in Texas. It might look like I'm in Vermont, which I really wish I was right now. But it is, it's actually a winter grass, and it will not grow everywhere. That's really the main difference when people always ask me about, bourbon and rye and whiskey in general. And the umbrella being that it's whiskey, the difference between the different types of whiskey is really the grain sources. And ours being really everything 94+% rye, except for Homestock, which is kind of a fun one that we did on the fly as we went into COVID times, and people got to actually blend at home and then vote on their favorite blend, which was really cool. So it was the first ever crowdsourced whiskey we've ever done.
Cool. Anonymous attendee, I guess their name is not pulling in, sorry about that, would like to know which of your products is best for a beginner to try.
Great question. When I look at the portfolio myself, I know what we've kind of thought about when it comes to, steering people in one direction or the other. Most of the time, I would always say start with 10-year because it's what brought us in our brand to life. But now that we have something in the category and price point of piggyback, it is a 6-year 100% rye at 96.56 proof. And I'm not going to quote price, but Caroline and Mark can do that all you want. It's really in that $40 range. It's SRP is $49.99. There you go. At the end of the day, that's where I would always start, because what you're going to see is something that is to introduce you maybe to rye, introduce you to 100% rye mash bill. Maybe it's to introduce you to WhistlePig as a whole. But what it's there for is to showcase what age statement, high proof, and 100% rye really has to offer. Now, if you have the means, I'm going to tell you, you can go as high and far and wide as you'd like with the Boss Hogs that we've been discussing or anything else. But I always say, if you want to know what we're all about, start with either piggyback or tenure.
Awesome. We've got a couple more, if you don't mind, before you continue on.
Well, we can turn this into Q&A. I see all the numbers continuing to grow, so
Okay.
have fun with all the questions you'd like.
Cool. So Austin has seen the 10-year in a 375 and 50 milliliter bottles. He wants to know if any other products are available in smaller bottles. So Mark, if you know if we have those, that would be great. And Doug, if you know if they exist anywhere else, that would be great.
They do not currently. So 10 years is the only one that we have multiple formats right now. Now, moving into next year, there's the hopes that we will have some other whiskeys in our portfolio that will find their way to the 50 ml and other formats. More importantly, the goal is to have piggyback in a 50 ml at some point next year. But keep in mind, we were talking about it, joking about it on the call earlier before we went live. Caroline and Mark have seen the operation. Doing 50 mLs by hand is quite time consuming. So therefore, it's not something that we've really driven home right now. But as we continue to grow, we're going to continue to think of other ways and other avenues to make sure that we can, support the market with these things. Also keep in mind, there is a rainbow set that is just landed or should be landing in New Hampshire. And I'm sure Ashley can attest to that. But it is a 50 ml of 10, 12, and 15 for the first time in a set together. Great for gifting, great for trying whiskeys that maybe you're familiar with 10-year and you've had piggyback or you've had farm stock, but you're really curious of what 12 and 15 have to offer. We'll have those out and available not only in New Hampshire, but nationwide in November and December.
We're going to have those in New Hampshire a little later. I'm sorry, that was my fault. I missed the listing submission. We didn't have the information yet for the end of the year. So we'll have that available in New Hampshire for next year. And it's awesome. Our little piglets. So a great way to try everything that are 10, 12, and 15 year.
Great. So another question from Facebook. So somebody wants to know if they can come to the farm and get products that are no longer sold in stores. So I can answer the first half of this question. The farm is not open for visiting, but there is a tasting room right near it. And I will let Doug and Ashley take the rest of this question.
Yeah, so unfortunately right now, the farm is shut down. The tasting rooms are closed. We're just trying to be the best Vermonters and safety first type of people. So when things kind of starting to loosen up, hopefully we'll be able to have the tasting room back open. Because we're in Vermont, it's not our law, it's Vermont law that we can't have public tours. But at the same time, we reserve some of those tours and some of those things for people coming out and buying barrels. And if you are interested in any of that, you can reach out to our marketing department on the website. We do sell barrels to not only states like New Hampshire, but also to bar and restaurant groups, private individuals, companies. It's a great Christmas gift while we're far past that window of activity. Unfortunately, that's where we stand right now. And because we are a distillery and we are a producer of said liquid, unfortunately, there's no way for us to sell direct. I'm doing a lot of virtual tastings like this and with companies and, Abound, and we can't ship directly. There's nothing. As funny as it sounds, I in Texas cannot even receive a shipment of samples or barrel samples or anything directly to my home. It has to go to the distributor or a bar or restaurant and somebody with a liquor license. So there's all these federal laws that we have to abide by, unfortunately. Or fortunately, I don't know. Maybe they're good.
Yeah, right. Well, thank you. That was a great answer. Got a couple more really good questions. I think we have some real rye enthusiasts on the line tonight. So Daniel says, I know bourbon typically only ages for a certain amount of time, but what age statement do you think is the best for rye?
Well, I mean, we started 10-year to showcase that rye at 10 years and 100 proof in this mash bill was a brilliant thing. So I, have a feeling that that's going to be my go-to answer, right? I don't think we've found how long you can age rye, because if you really think about your question in the form of an answer, think of it this way: bourbon being that it's 51% minimum corn, and corn being as sweet as it is, the longer you might let it sit. And if you don't have other components like rye for the character and the spice and some of the backbone features that rye really is there to offer, then you are going to get a little bit over oaked and maybe a little extra sweet. We've seen a move from sweet to savory, and I'm not going to lie, I know that we're going to have other things above our 18 year that will come out. But if you really, once again, want to try things, the beauty is that we are age statement whiskey and we are age statement rye. So it's really kind of up to you as to whether or not you like the 6 year or the 10 year, the finishing different components of the 12, the masculinity and the very, very, very high rye spice and, you know, kind of chewiness of 15, which people that love 15, that's just their favorite whiskey on earth. And then 18 years kind of really kind of going after the Scotch drinker, and Boss Hog just, you know, is a dynamic thing on its own. So that's an answer that probably lies within yourself.
Awesome. Anne was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the bottle design.
Yeah, the bottle was designed by our founders many, many moons ago. I know that it was designed to definitely showcase the WP through the back. Mark said he's worked on the bottling line before, as have I. The key thing when you're looking at the bottle that you might have in front of you is that you got to make sure that front label does not cover that WP through the back, because that's how we want people to recognize our bottle. More importantly, the shoulders, we want it to stand out. We want it to be very prominent on a shelf and on a back bar. But with regards to the design aspects of it, I do know that the glass comes from Italy because they're just the best at what they do. And the sand there makes it the best glass out there. But besides that, that's really what we were going for, something very distinct and unique. Now, with regards to piggyback, you'll notice that the bottle shape is much different. And the reason for that is because we want it to be able to be held in your hand. We want a pour spout to go in it because it's really made for bartenders and right now, maybe home bartenders. And we want it to be able to fit into a rail or wherever at a bar and restaurant you put the bottles into when you're using it for cocktails. So it's always been kind of a thing with WhistlePig that we've always had the bottles. If you ever see it at a bar, they're kind of lined up like this, like books, and we want it to like obviously be showing, right? So that's as much as I can tell you about the design of the bottle itself. But at the end of the day, it's very distinct, and we love it, and I think it's very, very recognizable at this point. And I think we were joking earlier about the maple syrup coming in that same size bottle and shape, and you recognize it. It doesn't matter where you're at, you can recognize it, and that's what we were going for.
Well, I don't know if it's just because I'm so familiar, but I'm pretty sure I spot one of your bottles behind Mark's head. Mark, am I right? Which one is it?
You are correct. That is a Boss Hog number 3.
The Independent.
The Independent, yes. That was
Nice.
my favorite to date out of the ones I have the opportunity to try. So that's made it in the special cabinet that is for birthdays, weddings, and funerals, and that's about it. So
Or election days, Tuesdays, I don't know. I mean,
I don't know if the wife would let me get away with opening that on election day, but
I love that you check with your wife before you open any Boss Hogs. I think that's a good checks and balance. There's plenty of things that I have to make sure and get past the wife. So I call it HR. HR has got to be passed through HR, right?
Cool. Well, Doug mentioned that the bottle was kind of designed with bartenders in mind, and that a lot of people are kind of bartending for themselves at home right now. So I just want to take a minute and tell those of you on the line who aren't familiar yet about our passport program that's part of our 90 days around the world events right now. So we are actually going to be giving away a $2,500 gift card to our stores at the end of January after our 90 days have gone through. We've got a virtual passport that you can download. If you played along with us over the summer, we're using that same app. It's called Scavify. The full directions to download it and play along are on our website, 90daysaroundtheworld.com. That link, for those of you who registered on Eventbrite, you will receive an email tomorrow morning with your coupon, the coupon again for WhistlePig, and it will also give you the instructions on how to play along. For those of you on Facebook, I will post the link to the website in the comments. And yeah, you can play along, come to these events, answer fun trivia questions, earn points, and you'll be entered for that gift card to build your own home bar, which, as we've just heard, WhistlePig is the perfect addition to your home bar. So for those of you who download it and start playing along today, the code word for tonight is a word that you've heard us saying a lot this evening so far. It's rye, R-Y-E. So I'm going to turn things back over to Doug now. So make sure you enter to win your own awesome home bar. And now back to Doug.
I feel like we're on a fun little infomercial because you're like, hey, but wait, there's more. There's a coupon. Not only is it the best selection and some of the best prices without sales tax, but now you get it for a little bit cheaper if you register. So
Right, there's a coupon. There's a chance to win maple syrup. There's a chance to win a $2,500 gift card. We have it all tonight, folks.
Yeah, and if you do
Yep.
have interest in the maple syrup, you can actually go on our website and you can order it. So just for everybody to know that.
Doug, can you share a story for me?
Sure.
Can you share the story of the pig design that's on the distillery sign behind you and where that came from?
Yeah. And I think I was reading that Ashley would say, do that and then ask about piggyback next. So I'll just flow right into that as well. But think of it this way. So when we started the company, our original founder and Dave, who unfortunately, if you aren't aware, and this is not going to end on a morbid site, but passed away a little over 2 years ago, almost to the day. It was Halloween evening 2 years ago in 18. But when we started the company, and if you're familiar with the area, we're in Shoreham, Vermont. Middlebury is when we say we're going into town, that's where we're going. It's just north of the farm. And our original founder, Dave, really loved history, right? And so they both were huge fans of Winston Churchill. And so basically what they did is they went to the senior art department in Middlebury College and walked in, and I don't know if he's watching. I don't know if there's anybody related to this person that's watching, but I'll just say this. I'm pretty sure that the person that designed our label is got probably a bar tab, right? It was like, hey, come up with this and here, sign your life away. And now you have to look at it for the rest of your life. But it's Winston Churchill as a pig. So if you actually look at a label, you'll see the top hat, you'll see the bow tie. My COVID joke ongoing is the fact that our new labels that came out this year, he stopped smoking. He used to smoke in the label. So that's really good for COVID, right? Because I mean, it's respiratory disease and we don't want him to get sick. Even though I'm pretty sure that the high proof would probably, I hope, would kill most of it. But at the end of the day, it's Winston Churchill as a pig on our label. And if you look at a bottle of piggyback, you'll notice that the pig looks considerably different. I'm always in a flat bill. Mr. Pickerel was always in a Stetson hat. So when we were designing the label and looking at everything on the piggyback side of things, and this was always really Dave's dream. It was always Dave's dream to bring age statement 100% rye and a high proof to the table for bartenders. So it's Dave as a pig on the label. And you'll notice the proof is a little wonky when we don't have like a flat proof. It's 96.56. So 56 is actually an homage to Dave's birth year. And there's also a nice quote from Dave on the back, year of birth and year of death on the neck. So some nice fun little Easter eggs that we wanted to make sure and include with regards to the piggyback labeling when we were designing the product.
That's awesome. That's a great story. Thank you, Mark, for having Doug talk about that. Our viewers agree. Great tribute. Wow, so many questions tonight. This is great. Let's see. How often does WhistlePig turn over its inventory of the Vermont oak barrels, and what do you do with the old ones?
Well, I can start with the old barrels because we get this question quite often. And we've gotten to the level of production where there's actually somebody that we've had as a brokerage that comes and picks up the barrels, right? So with regards to turning it over, think of it this way. We have the juice that went into our FarmStock 1 that was 1 year aged at 20%. We have some of the juice that was 2 year aged that went into FarmStock Rye Crop 002 that was 32%, and so on and so forth with the Rye Crop 003 that we're talking about at 52, and so on and so forth. That doesn't mean that we're depleting the entire lot of that 1 year juice on our first bottling. 2-year juice, and so on and so forth. So just keep in mind that we've been distilling for, over 4 years now, and we have 4-year juice still. It's not that we're just completely depleting it. We're using our reserves and, watching it closely, maturing it, the maturation process, and playing around with different finishes, but also different blends with regards to the FarmStock line is really what we're there to do. I can give you a little tease that there's probably going to be some different types of whiskeys that come out in the future under the FarmStock line. I joke all the time, there might be a Doug stock in 2025, but we don't know what we're going to do. It's just going to be something fun, interesting, cool, innovative, and include rye grown on our farm, anything grown on our farm, because we have been playing around with different things. As you see, there's barley and wheat in the home stock, and only 45% rye in the home stock as well, which is really cool because it's the first ever whiskey we've ever released that's not been a minimum 94% rye coming off the farm. So it's sub 50, which is really cool. And when it came down to the final 3, that was the lowest percentage rye. And I don't think anybody that works at WhistlePig had that one pegged as what was going to be picked. And it's really fun and really cool that that's actually what was selected, because it's a completely different whiskey from any other farm stock and any other whiskey we've ever released, just because it has those different whiskeys and components and grain sources.
Awesome. So Doug, another question for you. Do you drink this neat? I've never had it before, and I'm unsure with the high alcohol content. I have the 10-year.
I'm not going to lie. The 10-year is certain days I want it neat. I need it neat. I don't know if need's the right word, but I want it neat. And there are certain days where I want a couple of drops of water. Maybe I want to put a cube in it for a minute or two and swirl it around a little just to kind of chill it down. Every day is a little bit different, to be honest. When you're drinking whiskey, some days it's an earth day and the spices really jumping. Some days it's a floral day and all those real high character notes are shining through. So it really depends on my mood. It depends on the time of day. It depends on where I'm at. But most of the time, I'm going to try the whiskey neat first. And if I'm ever at a bar or restaurant, obviously if I'm at home, I can pour it neat. I can try it and be like, oh no, today I need a cube, or today I need a couple drops of water. But, for what it's worth, however you decide to drink the whiskey is, I want you to drink it. That was always something that Dave, continuously repeated, and something that we believe at WhistlePig. Once it's in your hands, it's your whiskey. And if you want to enjoy it this way or that way, whether it's in a cocktail, neat, 1 cube, 5 cubes, it's completely up to you.
Awesome. Thank you. I'd love to know how everybody else is drinking their WhistlePig. So if you want to leave a comment, maybe we do a little poll about how everybody's drinking theirs tonight. After our event tonight, I'm going to make myself an old fashioned. That's kind of my go-to. I love rye, and I love WhistlePig rye.
Well, Carol Ann, while we're on the topic, I just have to, give you a shout out. For those of you that don't know, and I'm pretty sure that most of you don't, she told us last week when we were on the pre-call for tonight that I want you to know one thing. I love WhistlePig so much that I'm actually on vacation and I'm going to come out and I'm going to do this event on Tuesday. If that tells you anything, when you're off the clock and you just want to drink good rye, it's at least it's not a bad day for you, right?
No, yeah, I want to hang out with these guys. I want to talk about rye. What better way to spend a vacation day? I voted earlier, took the car in for service, now ending on a high note.
It's a solid Tuesday.
Yep. So actually, we've got another question from Facebook, actually. So one of our viewers on Facebook would like to know what makes the WhistlePig, distilling process unique.
Really, what it comes down to is that we have a column on top of a pot, right? That's made of Vendome specifically for WhistlePig. But really what it comes down to is the magic that the girls do, and Emily and Megan for us. But the real big picture is the fact that we are a grain to bottle distillery when we're talking about distilling on our property. So the fact that we have literally rye that is, we don't distill anything else, right? We don't outsource rye from any other area of Vermont or any other place to bring to our distillery to make. It's just our rye. So if there's one thing to really, really hone in on, it's that it's rye from our farm. And then the other thing that's really unique that is really unlike anything else that anybody else is doing is that we're using our own Vermont oak, right? So when you really look at the oak, and I won't get off on a tangent here down a rabbit hole, but just think of it this way. As most of you know, things like trees grow when it's warm out. The time that it's warm in Vermont is very similar to the time that it's warm in New Hampshire. Smaller windows than, say, for instance, where I'm at in Texas. So the grow season is that much shorter. Therefore, the rings on the trees are that much tighter. And then also the trees are that much older. So they're going to throw a lot of different wood sugars and a lot of different things that, you know, younger trees might not. So when you compare American oak to French oak and you look at Vermont oak as to other American oaks, you're going to find that Vermont oak's going to lean itself more towards a French oak with a higher vanillin content and wood sugars and very, very depth friendly, right? And so that's why it's very unique that we have the rye on our farm distilled on our custom design that Dave designed stills with Mauve and Mortimer. And more importantly, you know, obviously the Vermont oak is crazy cool because 4% of trees in Vermont, and I think most of you know, there's a lot of trees in Vermont, are actually white oak trees that can be used to make into barrels. So that's the uniqueness of what we do at WhistlePig.
Awesome. So another viewer on Facebook was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the flavor profiles of the different rye varieties. I know we could probably spend another hour talking about them all, but maybe go through a couple.
Like the difference between the flavor profile of Piggyback and 10-year and 12 and 15, or?
I will not speak for the viewer, but that sounds good to me unless she comments otherwise.
So think of it this way. 10-year is, once again, to be the quintessential rye. It is to have the depth and flavor and profile of something that you've never had and never tasted before, because when we launched in 2010, there was nothing of the sorts that was available and readily available, and still isn't readily available outside of what we do. So what you're going to get with regards to 10-year, and once again, what we've been talking about with the single barrels and all that, that's off the reservation. That's a completely different conversation because they're all going to be unique and very different. But what we want you to get from 10-year, right, is that rye spice, that baking spice, that cinnamon, maybe a little bit of cardamom. But the most important thing about 10-year is that that proof delivers flavor, and that caramel on the back is as long as a zip code, right? We want that to have length. We want that to have a lot of longevity on your palate, and that's really what that's there for. With regards to Piggyback, right? You're going to look at something that's going to be, you know, when I used to sit around and when I started, all we had was 10-year, right? We had done some intermittent different releases, but really what brought us to the dance and what we still know that pays Ashley and I salary is 10-year. And what you probably know the best is 10-year. Well, if you've ever taken a shot of neat 10-year, as I've probably done more times than I'd rather care to admit, live, recorded, or otherwise, you know you're drinking 10-year. You know it. When you're having a sip or you're having a shot or sipping Piggyback, it's a little bit more softer. It's a little more approachable, right? The rye spice is there, but it's a softer finish. It's an easier, it's more playful. It's going to stand up in a cocktail, but the fact that it's 6-year instead of 10-year is actually going to yield itself to be used in cocktails and be more versatile for fun things like a beer and a shot or shooting or, you know, old fashioned, like you said, or an old pal like I've been drinking a ton of in the pandemic era. And, you know, it just allows for a little bit different style and a little bit more approachability, not only in price point, but on flavor profile. And then, you know, not to go even further and further and further, but think of it, 12 years its own animal because it's Sauterne, Madeira, and port finished individually. So you're going to get Sauterne, you're going to get this tropical fruit, this banana peel, the residual sugar. And then Madeira is going to really pair well with the rye spice. All these blue fruits start to jump out. That's why it's 63% of the marriage. And then the port's there for really structure and backbone. And it's there with that kind of leather, inky, you know, chewy, the tannins. If you see a bespoke blend, which I know Mark and everybody in New Hampshire have done some, if you see something above 7%, if they stole from a different percentage and amplified the port, you're going to taste a lot more of that port. And it's fun and it's really cool and very different and unique. And like I said before, comparing a bespoke blend that somebody blended and the regular is really a fun game to play. And then on top of that, the other core whiskey in our lineup, the 15-year, it's really based off people loving the single barrels, loving that rye spice, that in your face, that depth. It's finished in Vermont oak for up to 6 months with a heavy number 4 char, and it's got a custom toast on it to bring out as much of that, wood sugars and vanillins as we could influence it. So it's a masculine whiskey. It's a let's sit outside and smoke a cigar and let's sit around a bonfire type of really cool, fun whiskey. And if I can, I hope I answered the question, but that's kind of where I go with regards to the flavor profiles of our 4 core whiskeys in our lineup.
That was awesome. Thank you so much. So we got a ton of great questions tonight. So it looks like Ashley has actually been answering a lot of these questions as we've been going. So Ashley, you're overachiever, you. Awesome. I'm just seeing if there's anything else we missed.
Can I ask a question to Doug?
Of course.
Doug, I have one for you. Even though we work with each other, I don't think we ever got to talk about this. I want to know what it was like to completely change your life and decide to move to a little town in Vermont and start a whiskey company where you literally built the distillery by hand.
That's a great question that I don't get asked all that often. I'll give you a little bit of insight. I met our original founder years ago. I've sold the brand since 13. So I literally, part of my upbringing to the brand was that I had to drive across the country with my dog in my truck and live on the farm for 6 weeks. We had, it was Whiskey Camp. Entrepreneur Magazine came out and actually did a piece on us because we were doing such, unheard of things, right? We had no TVs. We had nightly assignments. I went to the other farmhouse and I was, stripping paint off the walls and painting things. Some of the other guys that were there was 4 of us, were working on the bottling line every day. And then we'd come back and it was just a very unique experience. I look back on it and I was like, that could have been a reality show. We had our original legal team and his wife and 3 kids that lived below us in the guest house. And we lived in the apartment right above, same guest house. So there was literally 10 of us in one home up and down with, separate quarters, of course, and my dog. And, those were some special times. We drank some whiskey every night, not always WhistlePig. What was available, what we could get, what we were having fun trying to learn about, we were drinking. And I don't know if I can even answer the question, even remotely directly, because there's so many things that run through my head about those memories and about the fact that we're still just such a small brand and a small cog on the wheel that is whiskey. It is something that's obviously near and dear to my heart, near and dear to a lot of us at WhistlePig's heart, because there's a lot of whiskey out there. And the way we went about starting this company and the way we went about making age statement rye and creating an ultra premium category that really wasn't even there, that we still own 65 to 70% of, and in the middle of a pandemic, still able to do what we're doing and have fun and introducing ourselves to people and the likes on Facebook Live and doing these things virtually. It's a blessing. And we're so lucky. And it's like any other success story. It's got a lot of good stories behind it. It's got a lot of luck involved and just good timing. And there was a lot of those things that were always involved in any good story, but there was definitely a lot of them involved with my story and the WhistlePig story as a whole.
I love it, Doug. I think it's the coolest thing ever to pick up with your dog and go cross country to follow a passion. So I would love for you behind you to post the photo of what the distillery looked like when you got there. The distillery, I should say, looked like when you got there.
Yeah, so
Ooh.
this is literally what that beautiful state-of-the-art distillery looked like. You shouldn't have walked in because it was not safe. There was literally stilts in the middle. If most of you have been through Vermont, you've probably driven by a million of barns that look like they're one away from just going. And many of them have, right? They've starting to lean and starting to go, and you're like, oh, that's not safe. Well, that's very much what our barn looks
Safe
like.
now.
And
It's safe now.
yeah, and it's special, and even cooler the fact that we did the right thing with regards to not bulldozing it and just starting anew. A lot of the wood, a lot of the accents, as much that we could reuse, we did. And as you notice, look at the barn itself. We went after the same look and the same structure. So, and not because we knew in 2020 there was going to be a pandemic and I was going to be the Zoom national ambassador and have these virtual backgrounds to show the different shapes of the barn and the distillery. But I mean, that's literally what we were going after, is to resurrect this beautiful building and this incredible story, and to make it work for us. And we're just, fortunate that it all worked, and we're all here having good rye whiskey and enjoying a night that we're all trying to distract ourselves still, right? Are we distracting ourselves still?
And it's the best whiskey in the world, literally rated the best whiskey in the world. So I think it's a wonderful Tuesday night. I'm really excited you could share that story with us, Doug. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, Doug, thank you so much for joining us tonight. This was a great way to kick off. I don't know, Mark and I, we used to go live on Wednesdays and we called it Whiskey Wednesdays for alliteration. Let's call this Tuesday Talks about rye or something. Make it our new thing.
Works for me.
So this was really great. We've gotten through all the questions. We've got a ton of comments just thanking you for being here. Great presentation. Everybody telling us what they like. Oh, somebody says we should call it Tipsy Tuesdays. We will take that under advisement. Thank you very much. So I hope that everybody has a great night. Thank you so much, Doug, for being here. Ashley, thank you so much for joining us and answering so many questions. Thank you, Shannon, for funneling questions from Facebook over here to Zoom. Thank you, Mark, for all of your feedback about where WhistlePig is in our stores and all the different varieties we have. If you want to try my favorite WhistlePig, go ahead and send us a message on Facebook, and I will send you the product code for the bottle that came from the barrel that I liked the most. And if you have any other questions for Doug, please go ahead and send us a message and we will get them to him or to Ashley, or we'll get Pete involved if we need to. We will get you guys some answers if you have any other questions about WhistlePig. And don't forget to redeem your $6 off coupon for being an attendee tonight. So thanks again to everybody. And we hope you guys have a great week. Make sure you come back tomorrow. We've got another great event tomorrow. We're keeping up our spirits theme this week, since it's typically our distiller showcase week. So tomorrow we will have Woodford Reserve on the line, giving us a little history lesson and tasting. Thursday, we've got Maker's Mark. And then on Friday, shifting gears a little bit, we're going to do a little Michael David winery, tasting 4 different wines on Friday night. So thank you again.
I'm coming for that.
Oh, yes, please do.
Love Michael David Winery. Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wait. I'll see you Friday.
So thanks again, everybody. If you have any other questions, or if you forget the code word for the app for your passport, it's rye, but watch again if you don't remember. So thanks again. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, everybody. Cheers.
Bye,
Have a
cheers.
great night.